was at my local Joann's and I came across a summer edition of Love Sewing magazine that included this pattern. Yes, it's an easy 1-hour dress from New Look, and today I'm going to see if I can actually sew it in an hour. So keep watching. Hi, I'm Tony, and this is Sew Lounge. Now, I am in the middle of sewing for my honeymoon, and I thought, what perfect time then to try an easy 1-hour dress challenge, because I need things that I can sew really fast, and if this dress can actually get done in an hour, that would be awesome, and I'd be way ahead of my current sewing schedule. So first off, this pattern is super easy. It is a front panel with a dart cut on the fold. It is the back panel also cut on the fold, and then there is some single fold bias tape. This is 7/8 of an inch. It is extra wide, and that's it. You put in the hem and we're all done. So let's get the clock started. If you've never watched one of these sewing challenges before, I like to work in 15-minute increments to kind of keep track of things and keep me on schedule. I'm using my handy dandy time cube. If you want to get one of these to kind of keep track of how much you sew or set time to start sewing, it's great. I'll put a link in the description below. So I'm going to just get this going and put it on quiet, and then we'll get it set to the 15 minutes. First things first, I'm going to unpin my pattern pieces and then pin the dart in place, because that is the first step before we sew the side seams together. This is available from New Look currently, even though I got it with a Love Sewing magazine. If you're fortunate enough to live in the UK and have a copy of that magazine with this free pattern, then you already have it on hand. But it's a cute pattern. I'm using this Chino fabric that I got from my friends at Leo 9, and I just thought it was really colorful and fun, and I absolutely love it. Now, it is a little bit hard to see my dart markings, but I think I can make this happen. This is always the biggest challenge at this point, is making sure I get these lined up. I have my sewing machine all ready to go with the correct colored thread, the correct size needle. I also have my serger all set up to go finish these seams once I get them sewn. And my ironing board is all set up so that I can go and press the darts once I finish sewing them. Pressing darts is one of those things that you need to do as you're making the garment, because once you sew those side seams, you're never ever going to get these darts to look right if you don't do them in advance. So I'm just going to give them a quick press. Oh, I need to switch this over to cotton linen setting because I was pressing the silk previously. Just give that a sec. Looks nice. And if you don't know, when you sew darts, you press them down. This one looks kind of, oh no, there we go, it's fine. You press them down towards the waist. Now that we have the darts in, I'm going to unpin the back. Okay, let's pin the sides together. Was I just supposed to cut that on? Oh, there is a center back seam. Oh, I just gave myself a heart attack. Okay, let me just check the instructions because I have not done that yet. And after the whole caftan thing, I don't want to have any problems because I didn't pay attention. And we still got 5 minutes. So far in 10 minutes, I have gotten the darts in. So stay stitching the neckline. We're going to do that next. And then we are going to stay stitch the back, center back seam, and then we sew the front to the back at the shoulder seams and side seams. So let's do some stay stitching real quick, but I'm also going to pin the front and the back together, or the backs together along that center back seam. That way it will be ready to go. And I'll just leave the top open a little bit to do that stay stitching. Stay stitching is done inside of the seam line and about 3/8 of an inch from the outside edge. Actually, it's 3/8 of an inch from the seam line, so that means it is about 1/4 of an inch from the outside edge. That's the easier way to do that. Also with stay stitching, you want to sew from the outside edge towards the center. So I'm going to just stop at the center front fold line and then flip to the other side and repeat the process. Moving on to the center back. Okay, we just hit the first 15 minutes. I'm gonna reset this, start again, see how far we can get in the next 15. Center back seam is done. Before I go press that, I am going to snip some of these threads and get them out of the way. I'm going to sew the front and the back together at the side seams. Actually, I think they said to do shoulder seams next. So we'll do that next, and then side seams. This is going smoothly so far. It's always a good thing when there aren't any hang-ups for stupid stuff. I think you know what I mean. First 30 minutes is just about over. We're counting down the last few seconds, but the whole dress is put together, which is good. I'm going to press the seam allowances open and then head to the serger and get them all finished. One thing I was thinking about is, do they consider the finishing time and pressing time in the 1 hour time limit? Because I'm about 40 minutes into this, and I'm wondering if, that's considered, because I've been sewing really fast and I feel like I'm making good time, but I'm almost out of time. I just checked the directions, and I'm supposed to press this single fold bias tape flat and then fold it in half and press it again. So I'm going to do that real quick. I am in the last 15 minutes of this process, and I'm really wondering how, in good conscience, they could say that this was a 1 hour dress when I've been sewing pretty much nonstop for the last 45 minutes. And unless you just want to go the easy way with the edge finishing and do pinking shears, I don't see how you can do this in this amount of time, but we shall see. Maybe magically this whole process of the bias tape finishing will be super crazy fast. Got the bias tape all taped, ready to go. This is going to get pinned from the right side of the dress, so let's flip this to the inside and start at the center back seam and overlap. The instructions say to overlap, turning under so that they meet at the center back as shown. So we'll see how this goes. So now that the neck is attached with the bias and we're going to finish this neckline, it does say to go in and trim that seam and then clip the curves. So I'm just going to do that carefully, not rushing, because the last thing I want at this point is to accidentally clip a hole in my dress. So that's always a good thing, to just slow down during this part, be careful, and be mindful of what and where you're cutting. Okay, so now that this is clipped, I'm gonna go in and press this, press that seam over towards the bias tape, and then I'm gonna turn it and pin it, and then we'll stitch it for that last time along this edge, and hopefully that'll get it finished nice and neat. All right, so I stitched the neckband, and then I realized that there were some ripples in the curve, which usually means I did not clip the seam enough, like small enough. It usually means I clipped it too big. So I started ripping it all out, and I was just about to pin it back in, and then I decided, you know what, since it's already halfway ripped out at this point, because it's across the shoulders on both sides, I'm just gonna rip the whole thing out and do some understitching with this seam allowance to the single fold bias tape, because that's going to make the neckline look nicer in the long run. And even though it's not part of the directions, I really just want this to look nice. So I'm going to add that step in, and if it takes me longer to get this finished than the 1 hour as stated on the pattern, oh well, because I think this is a crucial step that needs to be included. I finally got the neckline finished after much ripping and resewing, and then some more ripping and resewing. But moving on to the armhole, interestingly enough, the instructions for the armhole say to pin it, then sew it, clip it, same as the neckline, but then it says to baste it and then top stitch it from the outside. So I think that if that had been the case on the neckline, that had been the instructions to baste in the fold of the bias binding, baste it in place, and then top stitch it from the front, that probably would have saved me a lot of headache, just because at that point it was moving too much and I was having problems. But so let me get this lined up. We are sewing at 3/8 of an inch. So I finally got the dress finished. And one thing I realized while I was sewing this is that, number one, you can't get it sewn in an hour. It's impossible. Not just because I couldn't do it, but also because the instructions want you to hand stitch the hem. And this is a very, very long hem. So even if you could get everything else done on the dress, it would take at least an hour, and then you'd still have to put in the hem. And I don't know about you, but I hand sew decently at a decent speed, and it would take me longer than 30 minutes to do this. I opted for the machine option because I don't like sewing hems unless I absolutely have to. The other thing I realized with this pattern is that the size bias tape that they want you to use is ridiculous. It is a pain. I don't know why they want you to unfold it and fold it in half. That seems to defeat the entire purpose of bias tape. And it wasn't until I was working on the armhole finishes that I realized this is stupid. I'm not using this. And I decided to use the 1/2 inch black bias tape that I just happened to have on hand, and I sewed it the way you're supposed to sew bias tape. So I unfolded it, I sewed along the fold crease, then I folded it in, basted it, and then stitched near the edge. And hey, oh my gosh, you know what? It actually worked. So the whole neckline mess that I had to deal with, that was ripped out 3 times because it kept puckering, and it still doesn't look perfect, but it looks fine for now. It's just too big. And the problem is that it's once you fold it in, to get it to ease and line up with the fabric is extremely challenging, because you're just working with so much and it's just not in the right spot. It should be if you used a smaller bias binding. So that's my tip. Don't use the 7/8, just use a 1/2 inch, sew it the way you normally would, and you could probably get this dress done in close to an hour minus the hem. And then once you put in the hem, if you do machine hem like I did, I basically I finished the edge, I pressed it up at 1.25 inches, and then I basted it in place, and then I machine stitched it closer to the serged edge and kind of just eased in that top. It looks great. This print is extremely busy, as you can tell, and it doesn't matter if there's a stitched hem that you can see down there. Nobody's going to be on the floor looking at the hem of my dress. So easy dress for sure. Not exactly 100% on why they decided to go with that super wide bias tape for the neck finish or the instructions for that, but I think I came up with a good workaround. I did kind of stretch out the neckline a little bit, ripping and sewing and re-ripping and sewing the neckline, but it's still cute. It's more of a boat neck than I would probably like under normal circumstances, but it'll work, and it's all good. So I realized that you might want to see how this looks. It's super cute, it's comfortable, it's like kind of body skimming through here, but nothing that's too fitted. It is just to pull over the headdress, which is really nice. I do still not love this neckline. I might take it out and use the 1/2 inch bias tape and see if I can fix it that way, but maybe for now I'll just leave it since it's completely wearable. But you can see that it is definitely more of a boat neck, which shows bra straps. So, I'll have to work that out. But all in all, super cute, love the fabric, I think it looks fabulous. So if you've enjoyed this video and you would like to see a sew along of this dress, let me know in the comments below. I've got another great video coming up next. You totally want to check this out. I know you're gonna love it, and I'll see you over there.